Welcome to 5 Good Minutes
You're listening to today's inspirational message on the book of Esther
with Brady Randall.
In Esther 5, verses 1 through 3, we read this. On the third day, Esther put on her royal robes, and she stood up in the inner court of the palace in front of the king's hall. The king was sitting on his royal throne in the hall facing the entrance. When he saw Queen Esther standing in the court, he was pleased with her, and he held out to her the gold scepter that was in his hand. So Esther approached and touched the tip of his scepter. Then the king asked, "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be given to you." In today's text, we see Esther exhibiting calm in the midst of a storm. She puts her faith in action as she appears before the king. She's calm, she puts her faith in action, and she also has a plan. She knows that she would never show up to royalty without her royal dress. And here God honors the use of her protocol, and this pleased the king greatly, so much so that he was willing to offer even up to half of his kingdom. She touched the tip of his scepter as a symbolic way to accept the grace and the favor of the king. Esther went from fearing for her life just a few days prior to now being offered up to half the kingdom, and things have changed dramatically. But I'm really struck by her poise and calm in the midst of this harrowing, life-changing experience. Esther at this point may have felt that the weight of the world was on her shoulders. She might have been feeling a deep responsibility to her people, God's chosen people, and yet she dove right in head first with all of her plans, all the while relying on God. And this is such an important reminder to me, and I pray that it is for you too. That a reliance upon a big and sovereign God can give you incredible peace in the midst of any storm. I think about Jesus in the midst of an actual storm, as it's told in Matthew chapter 8, starting in verse 23. It says this, "Suddenly a furious storm came up on the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went in and they woke him, saying, 'Lord, save us, we're going to drown.' He replied, 'You of little faith, why are you so afraid?' Then he got up, he rebuked the winds and waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed, and they asked, 'What kind of man is this? Even the winds and waves obey him.'" Now, you may say, well, Jesus, he was and is the Son of God, and of course he would be calm in the midst of a storm. But what enabled him to literally sleep while the winds and waves were crashing around him? And what is it that enabled Esther to be so calm with her plan as she literally risked her own life? What enables people in your life that seem to exhibit so much poise and calm when things become difficult? And I just want to say that for Jesus and Esther, it's the reliance of a big God who is ultimately in control of all things, the banquet, the physical storm, and the current storm that you may be in. I wish that I could say that I was always calm in the midst of chaos, always relying and trusting in the sovereignty of God. But my learnings often come after the fact, unfortunately, for me. And just as I'm preparing this podcast, just a couple of nights ago, my smoke alarm started chirping all night in the middle of the night. I had just moved into a new house, and the smoke alarm is wired into the house for safety. It's 2 a.m. in the morning. My son and I are awake. It starts going off in his room, and he's already not been sleeping well, and this puts both of us through the roof. And so I wish I could tell you I was super calm and I made everything better, but no, I ripped out the battery. That didn't work. I called his grandmother. I took her to her house at 2:30 in the morning. I stopped at the police station. I called the fire marshal, and I was at my wit's end, so sleepless and just infuriated. And so I'm praying and I'm arguing with God and not saying some not so nice words in my head. And pretty soon I just gave up. I turned my sound machine up and as loud as it could go, put in earplugs until I woke up the next morning. And the next day, 2 people came out. They showed me the way to take it off the wall, tested the batteries, gave me all the info for the future, and wished me a better night's sleep. Now, why do I tell you that? What an awful night revealed to me was something about the state of my own heart. In the midst of that particular storm, I failed to be calm and relying on Jesus. And oftentimes, difficult things reveal the state of our hearts. For me, and Those were some of the things that God revealed in me that weren't so pretty. And unlike Esther and Jesus in the midst of their storms, my mind was divided on earthly things. And God reminded me, and I pray that He reminds you today, of our desperate need for Him, especially in the midst of a storm. The reason Esther was ready and prepared, not for the outcome, but she was prepared for whatever might come, because she relied on the hand of God. And Jesus does not promise that life will be easier with Him or that storms won't come, but He promises to be with you in the midst of the storm. So remember this, it's better to be with Jesus in the storm than anywhere else without Him.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.